Hi guys and welcome back to SitRep Gaming. So, Call of Duty World War II. After all the excitement from the multiplayer footage we've seen from E3, I thought it was time to go back to Sledgehammer Games' last title, Call of Duty Advanced Warfare, boot it up for some gameplay, and sit down to talk about the forthcoming title. In particular, I want to talk about one of the most controversial things that we'll see in the forthcoming game, and that is of course supply drops. Now whilst this hasn't officially been confirmed, given the huge success that Activision have seen over the last 3 years with the supply drop system's introduction, it's pretty inevitable that they're here to stay. Now the gameplay that you're going to be seeing is from Advanced Warfare. It's a game of domination on the map Solar, and I decided to use one of the most sought after supply drop weapons, the Bal Inferno. But anyway, if you're excited to learn more about supply drops in Call of Duty World War II, then hit that like button and let's get straight into the topic of conversation. So, we've now had supply drops for the last 3 Call of Duty titles, and given that in 2016 Activision posted profits of over $3.5 billion from microtransactions, you can bet that they're a key part of their business plan moving forward. Now before we talk about Call of Duty World War II specifically, I just want to backtrack over the last 3 years of supply drops, so we can see how the system has evolved and the problems that we've had with it. Starting with Advanced Warfare, supply drops were stuffed full of customization items such as boots, outfits and helmets, but most importantly they were also full of weapon variants, many of which were vastly superior to the base variant of that weapon. Take the weapon I'm using, the Bal Inferno. Now this weapon had such a high rate of fire that even if you could put rapid fire on the base Bal, its fire rate wouldn't even come close to matching that of the Bal Inferno. Likewise, the same was true of the Bal Obsidian Steed. Now that variant had a 3-shot kill range of 30 metres, whilst the base Bal only had a 3-shot kill range of 5 metres. Similar issues were found in weapons such as the HBRA Insanity and the ARX Hole Puncher. So by the time we reached the end of Advanced Warfare's life cycle, it had become pretty apparent that supply drop weapon variants created a really unbalanced playing field, and for most people in the Call of Duty community, they were a big no-no. So when it was announced that Black Ops 3 was also going to have supply drops, the entire community was put on tenterhooks. Now at release, Treyarch stood true to what they'd said during pre-release, and that was that supply drops were only going to have cosmetic items. However, after only a few months of the game's life cycle, they backtracked on this with the introduction of original weapons such as the Peacekeeper, the FFAR and the Marshal 16. Now I think that the supply drop system in Black Ops 3 was even worse than the one we had in Advanced Warfare, because at least in Advanced Warfare you still had the base version of the weapons you could use if you didn't have the better variants. But in Black Ops 3, you could play the game for years, and if you had bad luck, you'd never get to play with any of these original weapons at all. When Infinite Warfare was announced, people were still feeling pretty burned from the Black Ops 3 supply drop system, and when it was also announced that weapon variants would be returning in Infinite Warfare, there was a great deal of trepidation from the community, as well as, let's be honest, a great deal of anger. I personally was pleasantly surprised by the supply drop system in Infinite Warfare. Not only could you earn the weapon variants by grinding out salvage, but the weapon variants themselves never seemed to be too far removed from their base weapons. For instance, a popular weapon trait in Infinite Warfare is for a weapon to have extended range built in. However, this extended range is never more than 5 to 10%, which you can also achieve by putting the rifle barrel attachment onto the base weapon variant. So essentially, weapon variants were never as overpowered as they were in Advanced Warfare. So whilst Infinite Warfare's supply drop system is by no means perfect, particularly given the extremely slow rate with which you earn the in-game currency of salvage, I think we can all probably agree that it's the best system that we've seen thus far. So now of course we come to Call of Duty World War II, and understandably so, the Call of Duty community is rife with speculation about how supply drops are going to be in the forthcoming game. First things first, this is going to be the first Call of Duty title set in a realistic time period that we've seen with a supply drop system. And given this, and that Sledgehammer Games have said that they want to maintain a degree of authenticity with the game, I think we can expect a different approach to supply drops this year. In the last few years, we've had extremely colourful and outlandish weapon camos in Call of Duties, as well as extravagant weapon outfits, but this type of content simply won't work in Call of Duty World War II. So perhaps we will see camos which are more like those in Battlefield 1's battle packs, camos which are more understated and war themed, But the problem is that those types of camos aren't going to persuade people to part with their hard-earned real currency or in-game currency to buy supply drops. This was the real reason that original weapons were introduced into Call of Duty Black Ops 3, because it became apparent that people weren't willing to buy large volumes of supply drops purely on the chance that they might get a rare camo or calling card. So considering this, I can't help but feel that whilst we won't have original weapons in Call of Duty World War II's supply drop system, we will most likely have some sort of weapon variants. Now when I say weapon variants, I don't think they'll be like the weapon variants we had in Infinite Warfare, where for instance a weapon would automatically refill its ammo if you got a double kill or give you increased movement speed. I think Sledgehammer would introduce much more basic weapon variants. For instance, you might get an additional magazine at the start of a life, a custom foregrip, or perhaps the bayonet attachment that you can use in any of the divisions. Now of course, I might be wrong, but given that Activision want to continue the massive profits which they've seen from the supply drop system, I just can't see any other way that they'll do so without having some form of weapon variants in the supply drops. One thing I will say though is that if Call of Duty World War II does have weapon variants, then it would be absolutely ludicrous for Sledgehammer to scrap the salvage system that we saw in Infinite Warfare, as this was pretty much the only thing which appeased fans of the games who were opposed to weapon variants. So it's absolutely essential that if we do have weapon variants, it's accompanied by a similar system to salvage, and fingers crossed that type of system will give you the in-game currency much quicker than the salvage system does currently, because let's be honest, it gives you it fairly slowly. So what do you guys think we're going to be seeing in Call of Duty World War II? Do you think that we'll be seeing weapon variants, or are you hopeful that we'll only have cosmetic items as we were initially promised when Black Ops 3 was launched? Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today's video. I hope that you've enjoyed watching it, and if you have, please leave a like rating. If you'd like to see more content from SitRep Gaming, then don't forget to subscribe and turn on those notifications as well so that you never miss another video. All that's left to say is thanks for tuning into SitRep Gaming, and I'll see you in the next one.